Oh shoot, that last one went on for way too long. Maybe this one will be shorter?
Nope.
In 1999 came Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, or Gateway to Glimmer, if you don't know what a freedom tastes like. Some people may argue which subtitle is better, but I could literally care less, as I find them both equally adequate and intriguing. But I slightly like the Ripto's Rage more, as it's the original name and is a pure alliteration, uninterrupted by a lowercase having function word. My English minor now shining through. Anyways, I've been mostly looking at stuff from a perspective of the first game and the series overall, but I really need to talk about how the series evolved. The biggest change from Spyro 1 to Spyro 2 is that it feels less like you're venturing into new territories and more so getting intimately involved in them and their unique conflicts. We got prominent characters, frequent cutscenes, NPCs, and a brand new villain, Ripto, an entitled tyrannical little piece of work with anger management issues mixed with shortman syndrome.
I hate dragons! Gah!
Warning, it can get a little feisty.
No! You despicable little creature! I'll kill you!
Whoa, little red dude. You can't just go around dropping the K word like that. You're gonna get us pissed yellow circled of death. Not in my E-rated game. Man, the 90s was wildin'. You see, nowadays, you gotta say that you're gonna game end him.
I'll game end him myself.
Jokes aside, I love Ripto, he's freaking hilarious. Definitely the best Spyro villain, although I think the upcoming Sorceress is a close second because just of how brutal she is. I hate how they redesigned Ripto and Reignited. He looks like a gremlin instead of some overly smugged, pissed off looking pipsqueak lava dino. Like, this design just looks like he just wants to gnaw on my bones, while this one actually looks like an egomaniac, which is exactly what Ripto is. Anyways, back to Spyro 2. It's raining and Spyro wants another vacay, so he rushes towards the Dragon Shores portal, but gets intercepted by these freedom fighters in the land of Avalar, looking to get a dragon to fight off the dragon-hating Ripto, who they accidentally teleported here, and now he wants to take over because he can, and he's a meanie. He doesn't like call in a personal army to invade or anything. He was cut off from his homeworld in the nick of time, so he only has his two giant goons, Crush and Gulp. So instead, he just goes around causing conflict, faction uprisings, rebellions, and civil war in order to destabilize the region for greater control, which is scarily accurate to how modern wars played out. Anyways, you team up with the Professor, a smart mole guy experimenting with portal technology, Alora, a cute goat girl.
I'm a fawn, you dork.
Oh, sorry.
Who's mainly the level head of the group. And finally, the guy you're going to have the most run-ins with for the rest of the franchise, Hunter, the thick-headed sports junkie cheetah.
You're a dragon?
You got a problem with that, pussycat?
I think they were just going to give him some kind of surfer dude bro personality, but I have no idea what they landed on.
Hey, Spyro! Check out this cool cave I found. Let's play a little game.
I really hate to say this, but I can't tell if he's slow in the head or condescendingly acting like I am.
The monkeys have escaped from the Avalar Zoo, and I've been sent here to catch them. But they keep throwing coconuts at me, and it hurts.
Trey, what's wrong with your text boxes? Shut up, I'll acknowledge it in a minute. Oh, and I almost forgot. Zoe. She's a fairy who acts as your checkpoints and talks nothing but tutorial stuff you probably already figured out on your own. Well, you get tasked with going to all the worlds of Avalar and collecting each of their talismans, which essentially means get to the end of a level. Don't worry, the levels aren't really linear. There is still other stuff to do, and of course a web of gems to collect. Gameplay-wise, this game is a sharp step up. Spyro feels as good as control as ever, with some additions I very much welcome. Now you're able to do this hover at the end of your glide, which feels like a godsend. So many jumps in Spyro 1, I was like, man, I wish I could grab ledge. Guess it sucks a lot of attention out of the platforming, but I don't think it'll carry you, because now some glides are more insane. Yeah, don't get too cocky with your gliding, you'll still need skill. Jumping out of charging no longer has a height penalty, so that's awesome and great for the flow. Here's a habit you should develop. To get the maximum distance off of a single jump while standing still, press charge, and then press and hold jump a split second after. Now, there is an exploit known as the double jump, which you can get by jumping and then I think pressing jump again while also holding charge. I don't know. I never pulled it off. And honestly, you don't really need it, except for maybe speedruns and other exploits. One thing they did mess up is the fact that you can no longer rely on the short headbutt motion you can get by quickly tapping charge. Yeah, it seems like a minor complaint, but let me tell you, it was great for smashing metal stuff near ledges and small platforms without putting yourself at risk. I guess you can just head bash now, but you don't get that till way later in the game. Oh yeah, that's another new thing in this game. Learnable moves. In every hub world, you can learn a new move that will allow you more access to the levels. These being in reverse order: head bashing, climbing, and swimming underwater. Yeah, Spyro can swim now, so water is no longer a hazard. Yeah, let me tell you about swimming. In most 3D platformers, heck, video games in general, being underwater, more often than not, sucks, as you get slowed down and the controls get really cumbersome, especially as you try to navigate a completely 3D space, up and down included. Well, not with Spyro. Holding charge underwater turns you into a little torpedo, smashing everything in sight and shooting out into the air like if you were a dolphin.
I really like how Spyro can swim now. The way that he dives down, it's very natural, and I love it that there is no breathing gauge or anything like that. So just keep down there and enjoy the ambiance, and I love it how he can just shoot out of the water.
It feels really good, and while I don't think it's perfect, it is definitely one of the best underwater controls in all of gaming, in my opinion. Also, there's no breath meter or countdown, possibly because sea dragons, I guess. So you can stay underwater for as long as you want. I think the main purpose of you having to unlock these moves is to make you revisit levels in order to get to that one part you couldn't before, which, meh, I'm not a fan of it. Oh, come back to the first level after I learned how to climb just to do this single 15-second challenge? No thanks. How about I skillfully cheese it instead? They made this export more harder in the Reignited, but it's still possible. Well, if they haven't patched it by now, though you can probably still do it using this technique instead. Speaking of abusing glitches and exploits, this was the first out-of-bounds glitch I have ever pulled off. I can't believe I actually found this as a really young kid, like 7 or 8, blew my feeble little mind. I understand that there are people who like to go back to old levels with new abilities to do more stuff in them, but I think that only works well with like large interconnected worlds like Banjo-Kazooie, I presume, and well, the entire Metroidvania genre. Mainly if the ability repurposes old environments with new gameplay opportunities, traversal options, and new areas that expand it instead of just do a minute-long challenge or grab a few gems you couldn't get to. Spyro levels feel like, and this was especially the case at the first game, that you should just be one and done with them. If you're like me on the matter, I recommend just doing all the levels as much as you can, and just before the final boss, or after the final boss in Spyro 3's case, just revisit them all in order just before going off to the final bonus level. Also, here's a pro tip from me personally, go to Colossus before you go to Idaho Springs. You'll need to be able to swim underwater to 100% that place, and to do this recurring challenge that happens all throughout the level. And there's not enough gems to get the upgrade beforehand, so despite it being nearer, just go to the one on the island. These two portals should have been swapped. I mean, they're intentionally trying to trap you into revisiting it, so friggin' whatever. Yes, you'll need to buy those new moves. Yes, it's about time to talk about this notorious character, Moneybags. He's a living, breathing paywall, denying you access to places and things until you cough up enough gems. His function is to ensure you're actually collecting the gems, as you should be doing anyways. I think there was only like 2 gem checks in Spyro 1, so he's that, but more prevalent, and is entertaining to listen to.
Say, Spyro, you see this wall here? I bet you're dying to know what's on the other side. If only I had a few more gems, I might be able to remember how to lower the wall.
I used to not really know why people hated him so much. I mean, he never gave me trouble. Moneybags is a clear criticism of capitalism, and if you like these games in any ways, then you must accept this as truth and realize that we live in a society. Bruh, just walk up to him and press A twice. Is it really that hard for you people to play the game properly? Sure, he's condescending and is obviously conning you in most of these instances, but he's not that bad. Heck, this cutscene here shows you his reasoning and reminds you that he's still technically on your side of the fight.
That Ripto has caused enough damage. All his meddling has cost me a fortune. If it wasn't for Spyro, I'd be bankrupt. If Ripto were here, I'd give him a piece of my mind.
I think most people hate him because of his appearance in Spyro 3, as I swear, he is much more aggressive of his appearances in that game. I didn't keep count. Let me jump forward for a little bit. He forces you to pay a lot more in that game, and if you actually pay attention to what he's saying, especially if you talk to him after making a payment, like, I always knew he was a greedy, sleazy opportunist, but he is a straight-up scumbag in that game. Like, just now did I realize this connection.
I have to hurry in myself. I'm one of the judges for tonight's performance.
That was my best performance ever. I guess one of the judges didn't like it, though. He threw this egg at me instead of a rose.
You can't even say that he's on your side of the fight this time, because he made a lot of deals with a sorceress, the villain of that game, and forces you to outbid her. I do like the new voice actor in the third game. He sounds a lot more refined.
Well, Spyro, today is your lucky day. The wizards and I have worked out a little deal. If you simply pay a small toll...
No! Okay, so minor spoiler, I don't think it'll ruin the game for you, but after you defeat the final boss of Spyro 3, you'll have your final encounter with him, where he says he's going to sell a dragon egg somewhere, and you gotta chase him down in this great cathartic release, beating out of him every gem he has taken from you in that game, and forcing him into an early retirement. When I was stupid young, since I didn't really pay attention to the dialogue boxes for the most part, I was rather confused on why he was avoiding me. Like, I would have had it where he offered you the egg, but at like a price way too high for you to pay, at least up to that point, and then say he was going to sell off the egg elsewhere if you couldn't afford it, which would then make Spyro snap. I think that would probably be a kind of a nice fake out. Back to Spyro 2, though the following still applies to Spyro 3. The level structure, while still fundamentally familiar, now feels fundamentally different to progress through. The levels now feel more compacted and less open, with traversal no longer being the main source of challenge here. There is now a focus on, well, these challenges, there being 2 or more each level. You talk to an NPC, which is a thing now, and, ignore please? Yeah, I'm using an emulator. So what? Don't give me that look. I ripped my own ROMs, thank you very much. It's only illegal if you download or distribute them. Yeah, well, I did say in another video that I preferred playing on original hardware rather than attempting to figure out how to emulate. I wanted to give these games better representation for this video because I love them so much. And come on, this looks so much cleaner. Here we see the Virgin original hardware with its analog video output. Notice the messy blur, weird flickering on the static imagery, frickin' scan lines, and how I cannot load past the screen anymore no matter how many times I clean the disc. And here we have the Chad emulation, with its sleek pixel perfection, bright coloring, and being able to see more gaps where the polygons are supposed to meet. And apparently a bunch of optimization hiccups I couldn't figure out how to get rid of no matter what settings I changed. I know I could boost the visuals more, and I mean really boost them, but I'm keeping it at this pixely resolution because it's more accurate to the original PlayStation output, yet still high enough quality to look good on a YouTube video, even though there are more weird pixels than the original would have. Plus, it was this emulator's default setting, which I didn't change at first, so I'm keeping these visuals for the sake of consistency. Trey, quit going on random tangents. The missions, the level design. Yeah, you got these missions, or I guess challenges now, and they're given to you by mid-stage NPCs. The NPC at the beginning of a level just tells you what's going on, asking for help while magically knowing your name, despite you never ever setting foot in these regions before. I see word travels quickly in Avalar. These challenges usually have you doing all sorts of things, ranging from collecting a certain number of things to flaming a certain number of things, or you doing some sort of mini-game. Thankfully, they're not repetitive and vary greatly. Almost every single one is unique to keep things fresh. They reward you with orbs, which make sure to get as many as you can. They're not required at the beginning of a game, but you'll definitely need them later.
In Spyro 1, you just did the same thing. In Spyro 2, you're now doing at least 3 very different things from each other.
We have what we call Talisman challenges and orb challenges.
Personally, I both like and dislike the challenges for different reasons. In my case for them, most of them are pretty good. They can really test your skill with Spyro, or just put you through a fun little minigame that'll give you a breather from the main gameplay loop. My favorites include the windmill platforming, the paragliding, almost everything in Dragon Shores as just basically a big old bonus world. That combo power-up sheepdog fight at the end of Metropolis. Using the Supercharge again, even though it's more finicky than the first game and the layout of the tracks is more annoying to navigate. The bone finding mission in Skelos Badlands is great in my book because, well, has you going out the level collecting things, which is, well, what the game is about. Oh no, I forgot about this! No, don't do it! I love the revamped Super Flame power. Blowing stuff up with these explosive fireballs is always fun, though it's more difficult to aim and not as reliable as the flame bursting you usually do. So yeah, I do find a handful of them pretty fun, though I will admit most of them are mundane at best. In my case against them, even though they are supposed to be a breather from the main gameplay loop, which people were wanting, they can bring the level's pacing down to a grinding halt. It just cuts into the flow of a level, even though they're usually at the end, with maybe one in between. It still feels too quick though, because the levels are typically way shorter now, even causing you to backtrack through them possibly multiple times. Which probably isn't all that bad if you miss some gems, and like the first game, levels typically loop back on themselves, but to me it just feels like padding. As said, although there are a handful that are fun, most of these missions are somewhat mundane, with some just being straight up not good, either from being too unfun or just overly difficult. Or both. Let me list off some of the most notorious missions. The hockey one is the one that they were most proud of, even though it's just nice and novel at best and frustrating at worst. I mean, it's pretty shallow, and the AI is mean. I think people hate on this crystal popcorn one the most. You gotta collect more of these things popping out of the ground than Hunter, and there's like 2 rounds, and the last one is tough as nails. You gotta play perfectly to just stay barely ahead of him. I mean, I got good at it, and I find it fun, but I completely understand why people dislike it, with some calling it the worst challenge in the game. Another one I find fun that most people say is a contender for the worst is the trolley challenge, which is just bonkers through and through.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
Trying to dodge everything coming into view last second, making the whole mission nothing but trial and error.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
Trying to collect all of these golden gears that all respawn when you inevitably crash.
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
And hearing that phrase a lot ingrained into so many kids where it automatically became a meme whenever you talk about Spyro. I also can't forget about the infamous baby turtles being suicidal for soup challenges. Both of them. Like, why are these turtles just walking towards their obvious death? Is that like, is that dinner chime magical? Also, why can't I just end this guy? You just gotta charge these things away, but it's definitely harder than it looks, at least on the second round. Also, that stupid alchemist mission. I'll talk about that when I talk about levels specifically. People may say that the first game is too easy, especially since that game gave you so many extra lives. Heck, if you defeat an enemy you already killed, he'll drop a shiny pearl-like orb, which I theorize is their soul, so pick up enough of them and you'll get an extra life. It takes multiple Nork souls to equal a dragon one? Unsurprising for an inferior race. I kid. But speaking of enemy souls, enemies no longer drop gems, which irks me greatly, but their spirit or whatever just flies off to light up one of these power-up gates, which can grant you Supercharge, Super Flame, Invulnerability, or go boing. Alright, so back to the game's difficulty and how lenient Spyro 1 was with its retries. Let's be honest with ourselves, the other 2 games shower you with just as many extra lives, maybe even more so. Heck, kill 10 fodder, get a 1-up. You can literally farm lives in the Homeworlds. The levels themselves are objectively easier to traverse through, it's just the challenges that get stupid hard. Like I said earlier, the levels feel less open and more compact now. I'm guessing to make constant backtracking and lapping the map for challenge-related reasons less tedious. They flow kinda worse in my opinion, mostly because they just started needlessly placing gems in easily missable corners that are out of the way with the rest of them. The first Spyro had some of this, especially to encourage exploration, but here it just feels bad to me and like doesn't take game flow in consideration. Like, Also, despite feeling shorter to get to the end, the levels take longer to beat. Well, mostly due to missions, which I guess is the point. Something about Spyro 1 that I both like and dislike in comparison with the other games is how freeform it feels. The sequels introduce more standardization, which I like. Like, for example, thank you for including the visual timers on the power-ups in Spyro 1 Reignited, but these elements kind of threw away the adventurous mystery in my opinion. Once, power-ups came from random instances like fairies kissing you, or how Supercharge is gained by these arrows on the ground, or how sometimes fairies will keep you from falling, or whatever. Now, these random instances aren't as prevalent. Now it's like things like you have to go through these gates for the power-ups, and now all power-ups have this cool timer, which is okay. I mean, I don't know, it just takes away most of the discovery and intrigue that I really liked about the first game, but I still like these new elements. Levels are now themey. I mean, despite having the overarching world progression of medieval naturalism and fairy tale whimsy converting to industrial takeover due to the Nork invasion, the first Spyro was already kind of themey, but this is when it really starts to become the basis of every world. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with using popular themes and locations or whatnot for your levels, and it executes these themes really well and decides to mix up ideas in some pretty cool ways. Plus, an interesting overarching design that this game has of its own is that almost every level has a counterpart. Yeah, you may not realize it at first, and some being counterparts may feel like a stretch, but you'll probably catch on when you play Breeze Harbor and Zypher, two of my favorite levels. I mean, they have Spyro essentially acting like a mercenary, fighting for whoever's allowing him access to the shinies. One level has you fending off worm guys and helping the bird dudes get their air fleet ready for a counterattack, and the next one has you helping the worm guys to fend off a full-on invasion of bird dudes. These levels and their designs get creative. Although it doesn't feel like you're venturing into magical, forgotten, war-torn lands anymore, it sure feels like you're being thrown to a creative though recognizable worlds, becoming war-torn, but still having peaceful residents in them trying to deal with it. So yeah, although it does a good job with the level themings, my biggest problem with this kind of theming the Spyro series adapts from here on out is, I'll talk about it more when I talk about the third game, because it goes a little crazy in that game. Also, one cool new change is that the hub worlds no longer have enemies. Now they appropriately feel like safe havens and have a nice soothing atmosphere, aided by this surreal yet tranquil music. Or I guess, better to say, ambience. It's quite nice. There are only 3 homeworlds this time around, but they do host more stages each. We got Summer Forest, Autumn Plains, and Winter Tundra. Yeah, they're based off of seasons, but there's no representation for spring. This is so sad. Can we hit 46 quintillion likes for the marginalized spring peeps? Well, that would be very much appreciative. So yes, the world and gameplay of Spyro 2 subtly yet surely feels fundamentally different than Spyro 1, but not really in a bad way, as this new direction is still very good in its own right. If there's one thing that the level themes really improve upon, it's the music. Although Spyro 1's soundtrack is great, and even has varying moods, most of it just feels like it can just blur together. In Spyro 2, Copeland adds to his unique style with regional instruments and other appropriate sounds that fit the themes of each level, including a lot of mechanical noises and ambience, which I really dig. It's like Spyro's signature music is being stretched and transformed with all sorts of cultural flair. Although I personally don't really like these levels all that much for the reasons I've already laid out, they're still really well designed and many of them are of good quality. My favorites would have to be Colossus, Magma Cone, Scorch with its cool enemies like these reposting swordsmen, and Desert Arquebus, adopted in the Ottoman Empire and other Middle Eastern nations around the 1500s I think, also censored in the remake. Oh, and this level also has like these 2 child spies helping you out that are essentially let's see, more favorite levels. Robotica Farms and definitely Metropolis. Breeze Harbor and Zypher, I already mentioned those. Hurricos, heck yeah! Besides the garbage mission with the Thunderstones, this is an amazingly designed and fun to play level, with an amazing and entrancing atmosphere, backed by possibly my favorite music track in the game. of this while populated by nerdy monotone SpongeBobs.
Thank you, Spyro. You've deactivated all of the electric barriers. We've been guarding this talisman
from the gear grinders. Please, take it as a reward.
Why did they change this in the remake? Why? Well, apparently, Nickelodeon freaking copyrighted the sound of SpongeBob's voice. Yes, part of Tom Kenny's biological ability is now enslaved by Viacom. What the crap? Sadly, now I have least favorite levels. Idaho Springs is a good level, but the atmosphere just makes it feel drab for me, and also, I can't charge through the enemies, which breaks the usually high-paced flow. Like, why do you get bounced back by only some enemies that you're supposed to charge through in this game? It's unsatisfying. They didn't do that at all in Spyro 1. Well, except for maybe these guys, but they were big, that was the point. Sunny Shores was okay, but it just rubs me the wrong way. Especially since you just have to return to it to do the annoying and notorious turtle suicide soup mission. Fracture Hills, ugh. Most people hate it because...
I'm gonna stick me thumbs in your eyes and hang on till you're dead!
Honestly, I don't mind that. But what I do mind is the awful, and I mean awful alchemist missions where you have to escort this old dude over to Hunter to free him of a chronic case of mafia foot.
Not the bad thing.
It sounds straightforward, but it's literally not, as he takes the most nonsensical, convoluted path possible. He even intentionally jukes you. The real kicker is the fact that Hunter is literally right next to his house. Oh, this has to be a joke by the devs at our expense. Ugh. Rise up, gamers. Also, to rub salt in the wound, you'll need the head bash for Hunter's missions, which takes place right after that mission. And if you don't have it, which you won't because it's in the next world, you'll have to do the dang freaking escort mission all over again. I advise ignoring the lower level of this stage until you buy that move. I almost forgot to mention the flying levels again. They're back, and they're as good as ever, at first. I swear, as this game goes on, the more linear they feel. In Spyro 1, and definitely at least the first speedway of this game, they feel like they have multiple beginnings, which initially lure you with an obvious path, but you can go and create an optimal path or your own, or see what goes faster, and, explore and kind of figure it out yourself. But it feels like they just started to cheap out on that concept, making these levels so much less open and fun. Like, there is a straight path now, and you better follow it, and you better not diverge through it, so yeah, I guess. Like, what fun is that? Oh, but you can now supercharge now on these stages. Is supercharge faster than flying? I mean, they look similar enough for it not to be worth it, but I swear the charge is just slightly faster, but I can't confirm. I guess I better test it out on these expendable spectators. Oh look, you can talk to one. Yes, that's right, there's a hidden NPC you can find in each flying level that'll give you a challenge, which always has something to do with Hunter. And they're all pretty good. Guess what? The bosses feel like actual bosses. You got Crush, Gulp, and Ripto. They're not too hard, but they'll still challenge you. Honestly, if you were to ask me, I felt like it was too hard, at least as a kid. Then again, I swore these fireballs were like 4 times larger, and that this chasing attack was near impossible to avoid. As for Gulp, hitboxes everywhere, especially in front of where you're headed. Yeah, so he literally leads his shots. I recommend doing this little dance here to get them all mixed up. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I didn't get past this part when I was younger. I didn't beat this game until college when I was scouring eBay for cheap replacements for some of my old scratched up games. Now, spoiler alert for both Spyro 1 and 2, although I don't think it will ruin your enjoyment because they're simple platformer games with simple stories. Ripto is the best final boss in the series. He even has 3 phases that are all creative and challenging. That weird final cyborg bird phase is really tough, and I remember it being like near impossible to get hits on him. Though during this run I was able to get through him on first try, so I don't know. Yeah, in the original Spyro games, the villains, at least implicitly, were all supposed to permanently die after you dealt with them. But of course, in future games, but temptation was just too great to just leave him that way, especially since Ripto is such a great villain. Now that Ripto is game ended, you get your rightful compensation and head out to Dragon Shores and take place in theme park festivities like shooting stuff. Trouble Trolley 2.0.
Trouble with the trolley, eh? What?
Shooting stuff, but more explodey. And the Love Tunnel. And if you do all that, you get to enter the theater, which is just a cutscene viewer. And if you got all the gems and such, you can achieve permanent super flame, which is now useless unless you're a speedrunner. Or if you start a new game over that file, you can play through the whole game with it, although for some reason it wasn't working with me. Might as well mess around with some cheat codes while I'm at it.
Bruh.
I should probably also mention these skill points. They're practically achievements back before achievements were a thing. They pretty much have you doing all sorts of random or skillful stuff like fly on this far off idol or beat the bosses without taking damage. Yeah, that's a no bueno for me. They don't count towards your completion score, so I would say don't worry about them if you're doing 100% playthrough, just like you likely wouldn't worry about getting achievements or trophies, even though those are technically outside the game. These are part of the game itself, and do unlock this neat little epilogue and art for some of the scrapped enemies. Whatever, I don't care for them. Especially since they're like really hidden. You have to like find like an online guide just to get names or an explanation on what it wants you to do. So, overall, Spyro 2 is a great game that expanded on the first game, though in ways that I'm not too pleased with. Plus, although it attempts to address the first game's flaws, it also spawns some new ones while doing so. Still, it's a great game with amazing gameplay, overflowing with creativity. It is an awesome adventure, one that I would highly recommend. Fun fact, it took only a little over a year for them to develop this game, mostly since they used the first Spyro game as a base to work off of. It must have crossed their minds that if they were to do that again, they would be able to create a third game right before the new generation of consoles started rolling out. But this begs the question, where could our purple dragon go from here? Maybe to the other side of the world. But that is for next time. Spyro 3. I have some spicy opinions on Spyro's last glorious hoorah, but I'll blur them out to you next time, so sub if you want to see that. So until next time, I'll see you next time, so see ya.